afternoon. My name is Linda Henke, and it's my privilege to welcome you to this session that's titled Seen and Unseen, the Church's Visual Song. We are here through the sponsorship of the Center for Church Music, which is physically housed at Concordia University, Chicago. And the director, Barry Bob, is floating around here someplace, but he's doing another session at this time. So please look him up. I'm not going to go into great detail here, but there's a handout about the center. And pastors and musicians really need to be familiar with their programs. A great joy for me is that they recently expanded their portfolio to include visual arts. And there are some great offerings out on the website that you'll find, some interviews with liturgical artists. We've also created an award for student liturgical art that happens every other year. So it happened this year, so it won't happen for a little while. But it comes with a $1,000 prize, which isn't as much as it used to be, but it's still a thrill. So thank you for being here. The presenters are myself, Linda Henke. I'm a visual artist. I hold a BA and an MA in journalism and public relations, and also an MDiv from Trinity Lutheran Seminary. Yay, Patrick. I served a couple of congregations in the Rocky Mountain Synod, specifically in the Denver area, before I came to Indiana. And I've been doing liturgical art kind of stuff for about 25 years, full-time. It's been a great experience, and I've enjoyed completing commissions in excess of 80, so it's been good.
All right, and I'm Sarah Nordling, and I have my training both as a deaconess in the Lutheran Church, and also I have my MFA in studio art, emphasis in textiles, and so my love is to create liturgical textiles and paraments and things for churches, in addition to just creating art for the love of it. And I teach some teaching. Aside from conferences, I also am an adjunct professor of art in Fort Wayne, and then I teach mostly drawing and painting things. So I keep myself quite diversified, and I've been working with the Center for Church Music and their Wolfram Scholarship, and also their visual arts component.
Good. Well, thank you very much. Okay, so our presentation today, we're going to talk about the visual arts, but from the standpoint of the visual arts that are a song. I want to start with Creator God, partially because I'm a firm believer that that's where everything starts. God is the source of what was, what is, and what will yet be. I want us to think about everything that we're going to talk about in terms of the Creator and being an extension of the Creator. I'd like to start first with thinking in terms of the assembly. The beauty of the assembly when God calls us together around word and sacrament is as diverse as the whole church is. And it's important to pay attention to the visual of that, because that is an act of God and it is beautiful. Whether it's a casual setting or a more formal setting, or whether it's maybe outside, oops, missed that one. It really is a wonderful cross-section of what God is doing in the world. Now I want to talk a little bit, very briefly, and I'm going really fast because there's a lot to cover. Just sit and enjoy it. Don't try to take notes or remember anything. The gift of space. When I talk with congregations, one of the things I like to remind them of is that every space is a gift. It is a gift from God, and it's important to receive that gift with a spirit of thanksgiving, and then to steward it well based on what you have. Whether it's an inner city congregation with lots of kind of flowery adornment, or a little country church out in the middle of the plains of Nebraska with the wheat fields, or whether it's a historic church in Michigan, or a mid-century modern church in New Mexico, or a new structure congregation that has a beautiful facility, but also if it's a storefront church, or if it's a church that gathers in home. Okay. Drama and movement. I especially want you to think about movement as a visual. We have great movement in the church. I like to start with processionals, when we process in, when we process for the gospel reading, when the choir comes in to enliven our song. All of those are beautiful acts of God, and they are wonderful visuals. As we bring forward the gifts to the table, as we come forward to the table to receive the body and blood of Christ. And each setting is a little different than the other. Each tradition is varied. When we process with the palms on Passion Sunday, when we have a little pageant on Christmas Eve, and of course the great vigil when we have wondrous visuals and movement. Baptism, it's practiced a little differently in different places, but it's always a testimony, a call back to how we come to be God's people and how we come to be sent out to be God's people in the world. Affirmations of baptism are a wonderful celebration as well, especially if it includes the asperges. Not everybody likes it, but it's fun. Confirmations, different traditions, different places, different ways of doing it, but wonderful visuals. If you haven't ever been to an ordination, you need to go to one. It's a wonderful experience, and it also gives you a visual that is like none other. Holy unions. God calls people together to care for one another in a special bond, and this is God's work in our midst, and it is a beautiful visual for the church. Funerals. We don't think of funerals as being art or as being very pretty, but they are beautiful. I remember being in seminary and having a pastor tell me they'd rather do a funeral than a wedding any day, and thinking that was almost kind of sacrilege. But I agree. There's something about a funeral that hearts are more open, and there is a special kind of receptivity there that is exceptional. The procession of the funeral party is also very powerful, especially if we've got that wonderful covering over the casket. Dance and movement. How many of you have dancers in your congregation that you know of? Good. Oh, that's so exciting. Well, the rest of you probably have dancers in your congregation that you just aren't aware of just yet. And it is a wonderful form of visual art. Gestures. When I talk about gestures, sometimes we think only in terms of what you do with your hands or something. But in this context, I'm wanting us to think about the whole person. Our whole bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit. And when we are engaged in worship, when we are leading worship, we should do so with our whole person. A big smile. Get centered so that you're centered in what the faith is all about, and you can be genuinely and authentically joyous. If you're going to use gestures, use wide, engaging gestures. Gestures of our belovedness before God. The picture on the left is a young kid learning how to make the sign of the cross. And then we have the imposition of ashes, and we have the blessing or benediction. All of those are beautiful visuals, and they're powerful, and it's helpful to have a heightened awareness of them. Making special effort with the younger people in the congregation to be sure that they know that they are beloved and that they belong to this great body and family of Christ. The sharing of the peace. Mostly we're engaged in that ourselves, so we don't think about the visual of it. But step back sometime in your congregation and take a look. What a gift that must be for someone who comes in new to a congregation and sees all that wonderful love and reconciliation. During the Eucharist, the gestures are very important by the worship leaders. If you want me to lift up my heart, you've got to do more than just lift up your heart. Come on, lift up your hearts. When you elevate the host, I want to be able to see it from the assembly. And when you place the host in my hand, just take half a second to give me a chance to realize what a wonderful gift that is. Prayer postures. As we become increasingly a global church, we encounter many different prayer postures, and they are all beautiful, and God hears them all. Now we get to some of the more traditional things that we think of when we think of visual arts in the church. The furnishing of spaces. I always like to start with portals and doors, because it's the first thing that many people see when they come into your space. Need I say more? ambos, fonts, tables, the various appointments of the worship space, rich variety, traditional, contemporary, made of all kinds of materials, sometimes made by members of the congregation, sometimes commissioned of artists, but a wonderful variety that is a great blessing and a great beauty. And here, too, there's a stewarding of those things that has a prominent role. Processional crosses. If I had my way, we'd have a different processional cross for every season of the liturgical year. I know, dream on. But it is a wonderful image in our worship. Musicians and their instruments, and especially musicians who are themselves instruments. You bless us with your song and your leadership, but you also bless us with the sight of you as leaders in worship. So we celebrate that, and we celebrate that as a visual. Windows, whether you have open windows with nothing on them or you have windows that are filled with stained glass, they each have a special place in worship and a special significance. And again, celebrate what you have. Walls, we usually think of banners, but there are other things that you can put on walls. This is an installation that was inspired by the text, "Let justice roll down like water, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream." And it's three-dimensional, and it has some lame fabrics on it that catch the light and dance, and it makes it look like the water's moving. Sculpture usually is a fixed position, and so it's especially important that it be something that is, first of all, meaningful, but I would say nuanced in meaning so that you can experience it in different ways over the course of a lifetime. I encourage people to look above. We sometimes forget that there's a whole world up there and wonderful things that we can do with that upper space. Space below. Look at the floors. What can happen there? On the right, that's a crocheted installation. Can you believe that? The square in the middle at the top is in the floor of the church where I worship, and that's where the gospel is read each Sunday. This wonderful ribbon of water leading out is also beautiful. Is your church more a precious metal church or a ceramic pottery church? I say that they're both beautiful, but one might be a better match for your congregation than others. Do you have the host as a prepared wafer? Do you have fresh baked bread? Do you have sacramental croutons? All are acceptable, but think about it. There's room for creativity there, too. Okay, flowers. Every church gets flowers, right? I'm not going to talk about the specifics there, but I'm going to ask you to think about not flowers. Here in Indiana, we have a wonderful thing called the thorny hawthorn tree, and it produces thorns like the ones you see in this. They're a heck of a thing to work with. But oh, what a beautiful visual during Lent and going into Holy Week. An arrangement can be done of succulents. It could last throughout the Lenten season. That would be lovely. On Passion Sunday, what about an arrangement of different kinds of palms? Wouldn't that be incredible? And here, it's not blasphemy. What if the arrangements included fruits and vegetables? Light and shadow, we don't pay attention to it, but we do experience it. Sometimes we're not aware. Think of those Christians who show up only for Christmas Eve worship, and their favorite thing of the whole year is lighting that candle and singing Silent Night. Why does that touch their hearts when nothing else does? I don't know. I do know that it has a special power, and we see that also in the Great Vigil. All Saints Sunday, there is something powerful for people to light a taper and to say a prayer of thanksgiving for the saints in their lives. There's something powerful about a saint's walk that you see in the other image. Collaborative engagement. Sometimes churches create things within their own communities. Sometimes it's on their own. Sometimes it's in collaboration with an artist. But there are many things that can happen, and they are rich and beautiful. This is, on the left, is an intergenerational coloring project where they made stations of the cross that were displayed in the sanctuary. On the right, we had a number of photographers in the congregation, and they've photographed people's hands in a posture of receptiveness. Special events ahead of the seasons of the year where you invite individuals and households to create something that they take home to bring the season into their living space is a wonderful gift. This 24 by 24 foot tapestry was woven from 1-inch wide strands of fabric onto synthetic poultry wire. And we ended up with a big, big job, but of wonderful results. And that's still being used in a great variety of ways. This was created in collaboration with the students and faculty of a fine arts academy. And we created the bulk of it in the course of 1 week. And the kids still, I mean, this has been several years ago now, but the kids still come up and look for that part that they worked on. They're very invested. Our church recently passed a significant milestone, and they wanted to mark it in some way, and somebody came up with the idea of a wall labyrinth. And so we decided to use little round mirrors to define the labyrinth. The rector then improvised on a particular celebration Sunday and used it as a communion table frontal. And when you come forward for communion, you see yourself in those mirrors. And if you're really astute, you see your companions on the journey. Community. When people gather together, there's something that is very powerful that happens. I want you to imagine this event. If someone new to the church walked in and saw all of this activity happening, it would be very powerful for them. It would be a visual art of the church in action. Whether you gather for lemonade on the lawn after worship on summer, or you have a cookout in the park, whether you gather a bunch of silly things together and have fun, all of those things are images of God's people together, and they are a wondrous gift, a reflection of the Creator. Service projects. Almost every congregation has something special that they do. And I'm not advocating that you get on a podium and crow about what you do, but I am reminding you that Scripture says that we should let our light so shine before others that they may see our good works and give glory to God. And so think about that when you're having these events and try to figure out a way that they can be broadly experienced both within the congregation and maybe witnessed by those outside the congregation. Youth mission trips are a great opportunity too, but they broaden their meaning and significance when they are connected with the parish. People in congregations who have wonderful ministries doing quilts or prayer shawls or various different things, celebrate those things, honor them, and appreciate the beauty that is the visual. Okay, now we're going to shift to some liturgical artists. The first person I'd like to introduce you to is Scott Parsons. Scott Parsons is at Augustana, I think they're university now in Sioux Falls. And I still think of him as a kid because I first met him in my first congregation when he was in college. He's an amazing artist, and he does a lot of liturgical projects, and I encourage you to visit his website. You'll find that information at the end of one of your sheets. This, believe it or not, is his very first stained glass installation. Is it not breathtaking? Church in Columbus, Ohio, Holy Trinity, built a new facility, and they had their hearts set on having stained glass windows like they had in the old space. But then after they lived in it for a while, they decided they liked those clear windows that they could see out into the neighborhood and that the neighborhood could see into them. And so instead of stained glass windows, Scott created this stained glass installation, and I don't know how he worked his magic, but it just glows. It's really lovely. He does other work for a variety of different denominations. He does a lot of work for Roman Catholic churches, a lot of mosaic work as well as stained glass. This is some excerpts from his stained glass Stations of the Cross, also very powerful. The next introduction I have is not of an artist, but of an artist team, a team at Lord of Life Lutheran in Columbus, Ohio, which incidentally, full disclosure, that's where I did my seminary internship, but that was when they had a crummy old building, not this beautiful one. And a team from that congregation has been working for about 20 years now, and they do amazing creative things. They work with non-traditional materials, and they come up with quirky ideas, but they really carry them off with a lot of class, and they really connect well. They always are grounded in the seasons of the church year and the lessons for the day. This is an installation for Advent, and it's done with paper, and there are lights involved, and I don't have time to tell you much more, except that one trait of their work is that it changes a little bit from Sunday to Sunday. This was, everybody kind of has an old rugged cross, but what do you do with it? Well, they put it on the floor at the entry of the worship space. So you walk past the baptismal font, and you encounter the cross. And if you have time, you can sit and ponder for a while and light a votive. Okay, this was a sizable installation. Isn't that impressive? Anybody want to take a guess at what it's made out of? Yeah? Close, yes. 2-inch thick insulation board, 2 4x8 sheets. They carved it all. It's incredible, just incredible. Here they took some recyclable plastic and formed it into tongues of flame for Pentecost. Remember that cycle when we get the 5 weeks in a row with the bread of life? Well, they decided to create a bread of life, and they decided to use toast. So I introduce you to Toast Jesus. It's quite lovely, isn't it? It's Toast Jesus 1, because of course this one didn't last very long, so they've made another one since then. This, for the rest of the information about this congregation, they did almost a year of paper change. You know those little things that you learned how to do in kindergarten? And they've just taken it to an art form. This is an Advent Christmas one. This is Lent and Easter, and notice the play of light and shadow on the one on the left. Incredible. This was also a Lent and Easter. On the left, that cascade of paper chains is made of newspaper. What better way to chronicle all the various expressions of human sin and brokenness than a newspaper? Then on Easter Sunday, they pull a string, it drops down, and this wonderful installation of the living logo of God is present. It's Pentecost, I believe, and then this is Ordinary Time. Very, there's a wonderful 2-part interview out on the Center for Church Music website that will give you a sense of the richness of their ministry. The Center for Liturgical Art, which is housed at Concordia University in Seward, Nebraska, does a lot of liturgical work for a lot of churches across the country. They work in glass. This is kind of a cross-section. They have a distinctive style in stained glass. They do a lot with helping churches kind of reshape their furnishing, you know, the design, and they also create appointments, altars, ambos, crosses, and so forth. Crosses are one of their specialty, and they do create a variety of wonderful cruciforms. They also do mosaic work. The panel on the left is for a church in Indiana, and they designed the appointments to have little niches at the front, and those panels fit in seasonally into those niches. And so they're like mosaic pyramids. Okay, now you get to look at me a little bit. For about 20 years, I did a lot of hands-on, labor-intensive commissions for churches and church agencies, and I'll show you some of those in a moment. Now I'm working mostly with digital things. I don't do too many commissions anymore, but I occasionally get hooked into it. This, what you're seeing here is one of my banner collections that are available through my website that they're available as print on demand in a variety of sizes. And so you order the collection, and I send the images off to my printer in San Francisco, and they print it onto fabric. This is an historic church in Michigan. They did a complete restoration of their space. They wanted some color, and so this is what I designed for them. In addition to what you see here, they also had vestments and 4 55-inch round double-sided banners that hang in the arches of the nave. This is a print-on-demand banner triptych that I created to mark the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. It's still available. A lot of churches used it. This was commissioned by the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America to honor the memory of Peter Perella. Some of you people probably know him. And that's dye-painted silk that you see there. This is a church in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I thought you might enjoy seeing the full collection of the communion table frontals and stoles. They have a certain relatability in the collection, but they're also distinct. They were all inspired by the geography of that area. I have a number of exhibition collections that I make available for lease loan to congregations and church agencies in the U.S., and you can check those out on my website. A couple of them are specific to seasons, and you'll need to make those plans well in advance. I also do graphic designs for the liturgical seasons, and those are made available through the Center for Church Music and on my website. These I format in a variety of different ways so that you can use them as banners, as bulletin covers, social media posts, projections, and so forth. So, yeah, okay.
All right, now I get to take over. And I want to introduce you to John Rayhoff. He is a professor at the Purdue University in Fort Wayne. He's also a member of my congregation. He has gallery representation in New York and Chicago. He paints many parables and religious themes using near symmetry and an almost surreal setting. He got the prodigal son up on the top corner, and this was one he did for our church. Just the communion with all the saints. He has decided to start, as a spiritual exercise one Lent, he started doing bulletin covers for us. And he has now completed the entire 3-year lectionary, and it's all gospel-focused. And these are going to be published in an upcoming book on the lectionary, published by Concordia Publishing House. It's written by Carl Fickencher. It goes through each week's liturgical intro it and things and how they're all connected. But the imagery is all of these that had been our bulletin covers. This is the feeding of the 5,000. Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. You get the coin with a cross over the top of it. We own the original to this one. He gifted it to my husband because he helped him with the Latin. My husband's good at that, so he helped him get the Latin right on the coin. The 10 virgins, the 5 wise, and the 5 foolish. The foolish ones are in the background going out shopping for the oil they didn't get for their candles. Jesus walks on the water. Here's one of my favorites, that Jesus passes through the crowd that want to throw him off of the cliff. That he's like, they're all concentrated over there, and he just kind of do. Off goes Jesus. Every week it's fun to see, what he's going to come up with and how it pertains. Including this one, which is my fave, one of my faves. Get behind me, Satan. You have this kind of a shadow figure, a cast shadow of Satan, but we have Peter and Jesus, and he's just like, nope, none of that, not having that. It's just very cleverly done. That is easier, yes, you know this one, for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. Well, this placing with perspective, you can see that eye of the needle, and you get there. But anyone who sews knows you don't loop the thread twice. But just saying. It's a visual. And then you have the camel. I'm going to end with his set with 2 different Good Friday ones. This one's from John 19. Very change of mood, a lot darker, a lot heavier. He has to be careful, though, with his darks, because these get photocopied. And repeatedly photocopied. If he goes too dark, it ends up just a black blob, as opposed to the nuanced little things that you do see in the background, the roiling clouds. And this one was for the Mark reading. There's Renaissance tradition that the skull of Adam was on the foundation of the hill that Jesus was crucified on. It's not really there, but it makes a good visual, and so he's playing on that death, through death comes life. Then we have Ed Riojas. He worked 35 years as an artist, mostly as a graphic artist, designer, illustrator. He resides in Michigan and has produced commissioned work for his home church and other churches, ranging from altars to narthexes and including stole designs. The stole designs can be found at ecclesiasticalsewing.com. He does not stitch them. He has designed them, and then they are commercially machine embroidered. The altarpiece you see here, you're going to see folded in a following slide. This is Zion altarpiece from Zion Lutheran in Wausau, Wisconsin. Here's the Zion altarpiece, now folded. So you see what the would look like when it's not in its full. This is also a very European tradition. He likes to work with modern colors in a graphic style, giving a nod to painters like Lucas Cranach in his work. Here's the altarpiece. You have a nativity one over on the left, shown in its environment. So you see that those darknesses and the shadows of the room around that are just right into the painting. So if you're in that little altar space, you're right there with Mary and Joseph. And then we have Redemption Lutheran in Battle Creek, Michigan. He does larger works as well. This is his work for Grace Lutheran in Fairgrove, Michigan. It's a painting along the side and the front are a form of visual storytelling. Being a graphic designer and illustrator, that is what he will go to, as really putting out the story. And I hesitate to say cartoon or that sort of thing, but it is more of yes, I can't say the word, illustrations of the stories. I don't have close-ups of this one, just the large panoramic. This is for his home church, Our Savior Lutheran Church, Grand Rapids, Michigan. It is the Te Deum. It starts on one side, and it goes all the way around the church. And the words of the Te Deum are written underneath, plus the whole theme and story that's presented. You get more license if you can work with your home church. And unless you think the all churches kind of look a little more traditional or something, we have one for St. Paul Lutheran Church in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which worships in a gym. And they can't have stained glass. Basketballs and stained glass don't go together. So these big stained glass-like murals were done, big mural-sized painting. It also uses hymn verses, psalms, and liturgy as inspiration for his work, incorporating the words as a visual. This is God's Own Child for St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Council Bluffs, Iowa. Suzanne Halverson. She's a weaver and adjunct professor of art at Indiana University in Bloomington, a graduate of Valparaiso University. She is a weaver by profession, sells her weaving in various locations, and has completed many commissions, a lot for stoles and some for liturgical hangings. This intro slide is a close-up of what you will see in the broader context in the next slide, which is a work that she completed in conjunction with Patsy Zawitowski, and it is part quilted, but it's made out of hand-woven fabrics. So she wove the fabrics, and then they worked together to piece and quilt and stitch them into the design. Suzanne has completed many stoles for pastors, deacons, and choirs, sometimes just a little decorative choir sort of thing around people's necks for the choir people. She works mostly in this double weave style that looks a little bit like stained glass windows with the darks and the lights. You can see them visually in both of the images there. These are hangings that she has done for her home church, St. Thomas Lutheran Church in Bloomington, Indiana. she says they're the Pentecost banners, but I see all the seasons kind of going on in that style of thing. And then she also did the hanging on the altar table itself. A little story on that is they were all intended originally to be the same length. But she was weaving while she was listening to some distressing news story. And so she was a little more firm with how she was beating the things in, and they ended up different lengths. But I think overall, the different lengths are more effective than if they would all have been too matchy-matchy. So I was encouraging her. I said, but every time she sees them now, she thinks back to that. Phil Thompson he resides in Northwest Pennsylvania. He's currently retired and spends his time with his family and making sculpture. His work can be found gracing the outsides of churches, as seen here, on walls and in gardens, as well as in the worship space. His designs tend to be formal and minimalist in nature. As you can see here, just very sparse outlines. And as in this one, which is his third version of baptism, you can see we're dealing with Trinity, sort of within the threeness. We have a cross form in there as well. We have kind of a swooping, almost dove form. You get all these if you sit and contemplate these three bent pieces of metal intertwined with each other. It takes some thought. This is 15 inches long. When I first saw them, I had no idea the scale. And so I was wondering, is this big as no, this one's 15. This one is life-size. It is a life-size tomb in back of the altar that gets opened up for Easter. And lo and behold, he is not there. He has risen, and there's just the glow of the light behind it. The sculpture is 21.75 inches tall. It's a visual representation of the cross breaking through the barrier between life and death. One side is kind of rusted, kind of the death side. The other side is shiny, being the life side. He's like going to play on this theme, but there's more that he can say. So this is breaking through too. So you have that still breaking through in that cruciform, but now you have a bright and shiny, sparkly metal that's coming through there to have a glow of life. And breaking through 3 was another, using that form, using that cross, breaking through from the death side, which is the indent side, out to the life side, which is the more polished side. And this, again, is about 22 inches tall. And finally, my work. I'm Sarah Nordling, and I reside in Fort Wayne. I'm a weaver, workshop leader, adjunct professor, as you've heard earlier, and so I won't go into that too much. This was a Reformation cross I did for the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. This one is based on the hymn, Up Through Endless Ranks of Angels. I could not get the song out of my head. I've been wanting to weave these endless angels, and it took me almost 2 years to figure out how to represent them. How in my weaving form can I represent myriad upon myriad of angels so that we have their wings just piled up on top of each other, getting lighter as they go up into space. Here are 2 different takes on Advent. We have the Advent stole from a series of stoles I did for the Reverend Matt Smuts in Palo Alto, California. His church is very modern, very square, clean looking, so he wanted works that reflected that. And the other is an Emmanuel hanging that I did for, I believe it's the 500th anniversary of the first nativity by St. Francis, and it was for an invitational exhibit at the University of St. Francis in Fort Wayne, and they were celebrating the nativity, so it was a beautiful exhibit. Not just mine, but everybody's work in it. Stunning. Here are 2 different Lent stoles, one that I made as a gift for my husband and another that I did for Reverend Matt Smuts. When you get to Lent, you're toning things down. It's more contemplative. It's more of a different sort of season. I was picking up on kind of that rags, ashes, not quite, visual and bold sort of theme. We have the whole kind of weight going down. It isn't as clear here, but the colors get darker and darker as they go down to the bottom of the stole. I also do some embroidery. It isn't my first go-to, but on request, I have been known to do a Christmas stole and an Easter stole. Some friends of mine who wanted more embroidered stoles in their collections. So very, very specific there, not just for every white festival, but they wanted more emphasis on Easter and Christmas. Some more white stoles. The one on the left, modeled by my husband, is kind of an All Saints stole. It works for any festival, but it just goes with the myriad of saints, more than the stars in the heavens, but also based on a foundation. And then on the other side is the one that I did for the Reverend Randy Werschmidt when he was in ALCM. He's since moved to California. Here's a green and a red stole for the Reverend Matt Smuts. When I work for someone with a church, I take into account their situation, the setting of the church, what it looks like, what the needs are, what the desires are, going back and forth the design. He didn't want anything that was too literal, but he wanted squares. Squares had to be in every one of the stoles. And he's like, I want it to grow, but it can't be leaves. I want to have flames, but it can't be flames. I want my squares. So we would go back and forth the designs, push and pull, push and pull. But it's good because he pushes me into places that I wouldn't necessarily go, but that he'd come up with ideas that I'm like, I can't make that on my loom, I'm sorry. So we were both happy at the end because we got through the process. Here's just an assortment of the range of green stoles that are possible. So I can do something that's more pictorial with an inlay technique, or just ones that look green, or just this one is, you have to see the texture of it because it is green on green. And I was warning him, I said, that's not really going to show up much. No, yes, we know, that's what we want. I'm like, okay. So yeah, and I will do different neck forms too if there's people who have, if it's certain, because you'll see that they're done in different ways to do the around the neck, and I accommodate needs of people. And then lastly, there's the green pyramid investment set that I did for Concordia Theological Seminary in Fort Wayne, Indiana. They had a lot of pieces in this. There were 6 just regular stoles. And then you start adding on to that, a presider stole, a deacon stole, chasubles, domatics, and it was huge. And now they're wanting the white one, so I have to redesign. And yes, that is the end of our presentation. And by the clock on the wall, we have just a few minutes with some questions before we are all released to go out and get dinner before the St. John Passion tonight. Yeah. All right, so anybody have questions or comments or something to clarifications?
So you guys are tired. It's the end of the day.
I know, I'm still seeing this going, we're fading, and it's cloudy.
Some kind of visual arts thing going on in your congregation.
See, look, there's people out there.
That's great. That's great. Well, one of the things I would encourage you to do is to be in touch with other congregations who have liturgical arts teams. You can learn a lot from them, like the one in Columbus. They really enjoy going out and spending time with other churches. And there are others who are gracious in that way. So.
Yeah, and if they can't, come to you, they're willing to, talk and discuss ideas of how you can start things in your church too, if you happen to not, live where.
Yeah, it's not one size fits all.
Yes.
Right? You can learn from other people's experience.
And you can start with baby steps. Paper chains are, definitely kind of a baby step sort of thing, and not permanent. So nobody's going to be like, you've messed with what?
The Paper Chain Church also has some wonderful commission work as well, so they work with each other.
Yes.
I've been losing my sight, and I'm going to lose all of it according to the doctor. One of the things I found, I'm a pastor, I'm a musician, and I have shifted from, I love art, but now I love the feel of art.
Ah, yes.
I love the feel of the chalice, or the small chalices in one of my congregations. And COVID, we all were dipping, and I missed the wine. The tactile.
Yes,
And the
yes.
smell. And that's a piece that often gets short shrift.
Right.
And I go to plays now, and I go with the sight impaired, and they describe what's going on, and occasionally they have a tactile display for us to feel the bodice of a dress, to feel the fabric, and that's something we can do in our congregations for those that
Yes.
are sight impaired and those that aren't.
So for the sake
See
of,
the texture.
for the sake of the recording here, I just
Yes.
want to repeat a little bit of what you said.
Yes, please.
So calling to mind for those especially who may be visually impaired, or just that whole tactile nature of stuff. That is what drew me into textiles, really, is the tactile nature of it. The feel, the touch of any of the things, be it the chalice, the hands of the people, the paraments, the textures of the cloth. I recently saw an exhibit of tapestries done for the visually impaired, and every one of them was something you could touch, feel, visually done. But to keep that in mind as artists is something that we don't always do, but we should.
The other thing about textiles, I did an artist in residence with a UCC congregation in Hawaii. I did a short residency with a congregation there that was formed in the mid-1800s when Japanese people were coming over to work in the rice fields and so forth. And all this time later, they're 97% Japanese. One quick little story. I asked if they'd ever had a female pastor before, and they said, oh my, yes, we have all three of our pastors are women. But the thing that was interesting to me is that I did a presentation on my Passion Pilgrimage pieces, and a group about this size. And Japanese people are fairly restrained. Afterwards, I had them out for people. It was the men who came up and wanted to touch. The men who wanted to touch. There's something very relatable about textiles, I think. Anything else? Yes. Richard Kammerer? Kammerer? Wolfram, William Wolfram? Oh, well, if you're thinking of the person who's the director of the center, it's in your materials.
Oh, it's in my
Yeah,
material?
it's in
Okay.
at the end, yeah.
Okay.
All of the websites for the artists who were featured
Oh,
are there.
Yeah, so you didn't
And
have
I
to
encourage you to
quite
go
quick
visit
write
them
them
because there's-
down. Yeah, they're all on the sheet, so
Yeah, there's much to see
you can
there.
see their websites and check things out and
Yeah.
do inquiries
Good.
of these different
Okay, well,
people.
thank you so much. It's been a joy to be with you today.
We named one person who wasn't on the sheet. Susan Halverson is not on the sheet? Shoo, she should have been. How'd that get missed? I don't know. She's also trying to retire and doesn't necessarily want to take a whole lot of commissions anymore. So I hesitate to say, but if you contact me, I can give you her contact information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of your time here. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Steve Wente from Concordia River Forest. I work with Barry Bond.
Oh, wonderful. Well, so do I.
You do, yeah.
he's
So I just wanted to have a chance to meet you, and thank you for the presentation, and thanks for your contributions to the Center for Church
You're so
Media.
welcome. They do marvelous ministry, and I hope that this helps get the word out.
I hope so, yeah, yeah.